Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy. And today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. She is a psychotherapist, a speaker, author, and entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Patricia Bathory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Excellent. All right. Now psychotherapist and entrepreneur. I can see that combination. Which happened first?
I don't know if people can see. That's not the reaction I usually get. I actually started as I started as an entrepreneur. I went to business school. I got my master's at the U of A, my
Okay.
MBA about 20, I don't know, 20 many years ago, 20 many. And I started with the business world. Thought I was
Oh,
very
okay.
interested. I opened an import-export company out of Brazil. So basically exporting food products from Brazil to the US. So I did that I still do that actually on the side, but I did that full time for about 15 or so years. And then I started longing for something a little more meaningful. I call it my very productive midlife crisis.
Okay.
Not that the import export wasn't meaningful, but there was something about I wanted to impact people. I wanted to make people's
Mm,
lives better. And I've
right.
always felt like selling or selling food products was a little bit self-serving. So I'm like, well, maybe if it was very commercial, it was very great, but I didn't feel like I was changing lives. So
Okay.
then I went back to school. I have a science degree, that's my undergrad, and then got a master's in counseling psychology and started seeing clients. And that's where psychotherapy comes from. And I absolutely love what I do.
Okay. Now, none of it was about all the trauma that happens in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely not. I actually had a
No.
very, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
I had
Wow.
you'd be surprised how smooth a sailing it was as an entrepreneur. I was very lucky. I started my business in Brazil. My husband comes from an entrepreneurial family. So
Okay.
my learning curve, as much as I didn't know much about running my own business, I had him to help and his parents to help. So I was very privileged to have this village around me with all this knowledge, all this experience that propelled me forward without much trauma, as you say.
Now, you do work and help people though that are going through some of that though.
Yes.
I know you work with C-level executives and entrepreneurs, and yeah. Do you see like the differences being that you had these connections and these networks around you that really made the journey easier, or where does that kind of side of things come in with yourself and everything you're doing or have experienced?
I think you just hit exactly the nail on the head, which is doing it alone. Nobody has ever achieved success on their own.
Right.
And, of course, hindsight is always 2020. At the time, I didn't realize this. I just was very privileged and very naive, but, having this village around me, whether it was these more experienced entrepreneurs that helped me, or a very good group of friends, or a very tight knit family, friends, good family, a good partner. I had all this. So, I'm running my business, I'm getting ahead, I'm doing all this. And as I look back and I'm like, well, why did I manage to have such smooth sailing? And I really honestly think it was because of that, of all this support system. And today, what I find that my clients come in and they're going to be having problems, whether it's the tariffs that just came in, whether
Right.
it is, an import problem, export problem, or the economy that changes, or whatever it is. But we start talking deeper and deeper as we start unpacking whatever it is that they're struggling with. I find that ultimately the common denominator lies in connection, lies in this connection to whether it's to each other or to their teams or to the purpose that they're trying to pursue or to the company's idea as a whole. And once we get that organized, that more aligned, then the sailing becomes a lot easier. Of course, I don't make the troubles go away, because that's not the idea. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to make your relationship with the difficulties different. So if your
Mm.
relationship to whatever challenges you're facing is different, if you can look at that more constructively, more positively, and more optimistic, as in I'm going to get through this, then it is really what we're looking for, so that you can have more grit to push forward. It's difficult to have grit when you don't know what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. And that is kind of the currency of the world is certainty, or the opposite,
The
uncertainty.
lack thereof, yeah.
Yeah. And but on top of that, yeah, with a lot of these leaders, though, you talk about all these connections, and there's a lot of isolation, though, that in leadership and in different roles, and dynamics change. What are some of the struggles people are coming to you with, and where do you see kind of the breakdown then with it?
Definitely, I've heard that it is very lonely at the top. I think I hear that once a week at least. It is very lonely at the top, and I think also there's a big difficulty about how should a leader behave. There's this
Right.
idea that a leader has to have the answers, or that a leader should be not really relatable, right? Like I'm kind of here above everyone. There is, for some reason, people have this in their fantasy, the idea of the leader that is not fallible. And if we break this down, and that's a lot of the therapy that we do, is breaking down the idea of what a leader should be and focusing in what a great leader is. And what a great leader is counterintuitive. A great leader is the one who says, I don't know. What do you think? A great leader is one that is absolutely relatable. A leader can show vulnerability. These aspects don't make you less of a leader. It doesn't make you less respected. On the contrary, the fact that you do take other people's into consideration, the fact that you admit when you've made a mistake or when you don't know, this makes you even more respected. And that's what we find and what research shows.
Right. And well, you've probably noticed that some of this doesn't make sense when we look at how professional organizations are structured. And I'm going to use the example of psychotherapy. Is that a lot of counseling psychology? There's a whole lot of boundaries and ethical uh, things that need to be put in place.
Mm-hmm.
And the connectedness sometimes, of course, is completely different. And then in business and entrepreneurship, there seems to be, okay, well, a change of these dynamics as well.
Yeah.
So, how do people navigate this field of connectedness when there is boundaries, there is different uh, roles and hats people have to put on and navigate?
I think
And
that
you
we
did
need
it
to
with
question.
family
Yeah.
and money.
Yeah. Oh, I
Like,
did it with family and money. The first money I had
uh,
to open my business was my husband's money. And, and the whole thing. But I do want to address something you said, which is this: how do you do this connectedness that is expected from these roles? And you talked about boundaries. I think that boundaries need to exist. I think boundaries are
mhm,
important, but we need to question which boundaries are important and which boundaries are just isolating. And I'll give you
right.
an example from psychotherapy. So, my first formation is from Freudian psychoanalysis. So, in a Freudian psychoanalytical background, what you do is, well, first of all, there's the idea that the analyst is the all knower of whatever truth there is, and there is no disclosure, absolutely none whatsoever. And then I did a master's in psychotherapy, which then it's more psychology, it's counseling psychology, which is psychology. You learn all the different approaches in psychology. And then in there, there's still this non disclosure, this distance between the therapist and the client, which, it's interesting. It is, you learn about it, it's interesting, it has a good effect. However, I have been a big fan, and I have studied for a long time, somebody called Dr. Irvin Yalom, and he is, the reference of existential psychotherapy. And he is somebody who's very in favor of a little bit of self disclosure from the therapist side to the client so that there's relatedness becomes better.
Right.
If the psychotherapist can meet the client where they're at in their humanity, I think therapy actually has more to gain from it. Therapy, I think it is very effective if there is that boundary, but I do think it can go deeper. It can go further if there is a disclosure. Again, we're not chatting about my experience. So yeah, and this morning I did this, and you know what I was thinking about my child. It's not that is not disclosure, but it is disclosure. I'm married. I know I cannot imagine what it's like to end a 20-year marriage. I would understand what that would feel like because it's a life with somebody, or something about children, struggling with children, having adolescents at home. So that's what I mean about boundaries that are not so rigid, that they don't allow us to have better therapy.
And where have you found though when there's these smaller areas of boundary and more connectedness, maybe things that you need to bring back in that maybe, oh, I've gone too far this direction versus that way. I'm too much of a friend instead of a leader.
So when you're talking
Or
about,
has that existed
yeah,
with
I
yourself?
don't know. See, so with me, no, because because already I think I am pushing a boundary that is normally there. I do that with a lot of intention, and I do that
There we
very
go.
carefully. So yes, so
Yes.
my self-disclosure is very careful. So I'd say I self-disclose more than most, but this being said, I'm very intentional and very careful. I'm always in my, like, before I actually disclose anything, I do go through that filter about two or three times. Is this going to be helpful? Because ultimately, the disclosure is not should I say it, should I not? It's more about how is this going to help you go
Right.
deeper? How is this going to help your therapy? Ultimately, it is about the client at all times. The disclosure is not about me, but I will sometimes disclose if I feel that's going to help you go further or deeper.
Okay. Now, you've also had the relationship once again, business, marriage, and family, in
Mhm.
laws, all of that. And I find that absolutely fascinating. And do you think it works so well, all of those combined, because things were flowing and working out? What would
So
happen if there was
issues.
disaster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's put this in. So
Oh,
let me
I know there was
clarify this.
issues. I
No, no,
know there.
let
Yeah.
me clarify this a bit.
Hmm.
So the role my in-laws played were as mentors. So
Okay.
they're not in the business. The business is only mine. My
Right.
husband lent me the money, but he was also not in the business. They have their
Ah,
own businesses. So I wouldn't be able to speak of a business that has all these people in it. I'm sure that has the conflict in itself. And, I have families that I work with, and it is about whether it's about succession, whether it's about how the family dynamics inside the business. I actually have a client right now we're talking about is second generation is coming in. What do we do with these cousins that are not necessarily friends, but they are the natural people that come in? What are we going to do? So working on those dynamics. So that is a thing, but in my case, it wasn't so. I ran my business on my own. I had the mentors. I had the loan. I paid it back. I listened because they actually, for sure, always knew better. But had I chosen not to, not sure how that would have played out.
yeah. And the reason I asked is, being in the field I'm in, there's a lot of practitioners that go into business or practice with their spouse.
Yeah.
And I've always found those dynamics very interesting. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I agree with you,
but
but one thing I've learned is that there's no hard rule. I
Right.
will say
There
I'm
isn't.
on I'm on Team Dave. I don't see myself working with my partner. I would love to keep that separate for as long as we live because I like that separation, church and state. Um, but I've seen great partnerships where they go beyond the home into the business, and then that 1+1 makes a huge business. I think it really depends on, again, there's absolutely, this is one thing I've learned in psychotherapy. There is no umbrella that covers everyone. There are cases and more and different cases and even more different cases. So for some people it works.
What has been one of those like kind of different cases that come to mind for you then in this situation and with these dynamics then?
For partners. Well, sometimes you have siblings that work together. Like I have
Right.
actually a
Yeah.
couple of families that I know, siblings that work together and they work really well. And, I've heard from people that if it wasn't the fact that we are partners in the business, I don't think we'd be friends at all. Which doesn't
Right.
mean they're friends, but at least they have a close relationship where otherwise there wouldn't be any relationship. So cases like that, it really comes from the people, the partners recognizing that, one thing is you as a sibling or you as a parent and you as a member of this company. Like where are you? You might be a great contributor to the company, but not a good dad.
Right.
Right? So knowing how to really pie people up in different little pieces, right? You can be a great professional, you can be so intelligent, but as a dad, you might not be so great, or as a friend, you might be whatever. As a sibling, I don't want to go out with you on Friday nights, but as a business partner, you're all awesome. Or the other way, as a sibling, man, you're the best. Like you're fun times, you're all this, but you're not really as competent as I need you to be to run a business with you. So again, I think each case is a different case and they need to be analyzed separately.
Right. Now there is kind of those different dynamics or roles that we see. Yeah, family, relationships, business. And do you find that people are usually kind of good in one out of three of those, two out of three of those, or or are they not good at any of them?
You know what? I think people can be relationship experts or relationship disasters. Or sorry,
There we
relationship
go.
there you go. So people
Yeah.
can be relationship masters or relationship disasters because the way we relate to other people, the same rules apply for different relationships. It's about listening with curiosity. It's about suspending judgment. It's about trying to see people from seeing things from other people's points of view. And if you can do that as a child, as a parent, as a friend, as a partner, you will tend to succeed in each one of these relationships.
Okay.
So it is really about having the skills. So if you have the relationship master skills, you will tend to be able to use these skills in every across the board in every one of your relationships and succeed in many of them.
So let's break down some of these skills because this is yeah where the rubber meets the road here. This is it. So what are these skills that people need to develop and to become connected and to build these great relationships then and
So
not
I'd
be a
say
connected relationship disaster?
does that instead of
I love
a
that term. I love
relationship
that
master,
term.
yeah, relationship master, relationship disaster. Because it is like some people,
Yeah.
if I said that on the one hand, it's the same thing on the other hand. Like people who don't
Right.
listen, people who are not curious, people who are judgmental, people who, stand their truth and their truth is a one truth, they're going to be a disaster no matter where they go. And it's just a matter of time. They're not going to be friends with you today. Tomorrow it's me. The day after is the next person. So you asked me about the relationship skills. What are the major relationship, like, what are the major skills that make you a relationship master?
Right.
I'd say that listening to learn. So you're not there to make an opinion or to respond. You're just there to learn what it is that the other person needs. So acting with curiosity. The second one I'd say is suspending judgment. Yours is not the right way. Yours is just one of many ways. So suspend your judgment on whatever people are telling you. Third, trying to see things from different points of view. People have their points of view based on whatever story they lived until that day. So trying to be understanding of that. And understanding does not mean you are agreeing, you're just understanding. So I'd say those three are the most important relationship skills to make you a master.
Okay. And then where do they put this into practice then? What are some of these examples then that, okay, what
Across
would
the board, across the board,
across the board? All right.
across the board. People are what they are,
Yeah.
right? People are what they are. And most people, and this is what I find, most people are not interested in changing, right?
No,
So
it's
we live in the world, and let's use some stats that I'm totally making up. Disclaimer: I'm making up every single one of these numbers, but across the day, let's say in a month, 80% of people you meet will have their truths figured out. They're not there to change your opinion. They think they're either Republican or they're Democrat. They're not going to change just because you're different. They either like their burgers with cheese or without cheese. They're not going to change. So 80% of people have their mind set on whatever things are. There's, I don't know, 10% of people who don't know, don't care, haven't thought about it, politics, what is that? They're not, whatever. And then you have 10% of people, right? And these are the 10% I'm truly interested in. 10% of people who they have an opinion, so they know where they stand, but they're always interested in listening to learn more, whether it's about their position or about the different position. And these I call these people the intellectually humble, right? The naturally
right.
curious, right? The people who are like, okay, so you're saying, let's say I'm a hardcore, like I'm a super right person. What do you call it? Like right, politically on the spectrum, like
Yeah.
super right on the spectrum. Um, but I'm like, well, say more about what is it about this left that makes you so interested? What is it about the liberals or the NDP that makes you so firm with their position? So they're just curious. They're not going to change from like extreme right into NDP over, like they won't, but they're interested because they're like, oh, there's something to that. So that's 10% though of the people you come across. So you need to kind of start every relationship recognizing that most people, whatever they are, and I'm talking politically here because it's one thing everybody can very easily relate to somebody who's very different politically from them on the spectrum. It doesn't make that person bad or good. It just makes them have a firm opinion about where they stand. And only 10% are interested in everything else. So if we know this, then from the get go, you're not going to waste your time, your effort, your energy in trying to convince them of your truth because your truth is also subjective. So I think that is what happens a lot of times. We end up not being curious about why people think the way they do, which is the fun part about being a human, is understanding
Right.
what is it that you see from that point of view, Dave? What is it about your life that makes you see the world the way you do? Because the way I see the world is different, not better, not worse, just different. And these are the fun conversations, but we cannot have them with, unfortunately, most people.
Yeah. No, it's difficult, especially when it's a dichotomy.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm sure you've seen so many patterns in this as well when talking to people. Like you mentioned the 10% who are just curious for the sake of being curious. What other patterns have you seen in people then? And do they match up with some of like these online psychological tests? Because I
I,
know you've studied a lot, and
yeah.
you've communicated a lot, and you do sound like one of those 10% who are just curious in how people think.
Yeah.
Do you notice these patterns? And
Yeah. there's a pattern, but I see if there's one thing I don't like, I love the patterns. I do send a lot of my clients to that, the MBTI online, like what is your type? But I do that mostly to get them to be self aware of these characteristics.
Yes.
But I don't believe that they're fixed. I mean, I'm a psychotherapist. The first thing, it's almost like, what do I need to believe? I need to believe people change in order to be a therapist. Otherwise, I'm not aligned with my profession. So people will come in, and there's always an agenda on my side, and it's not my agenda, but it's my client's agenda that I always keep in mind. So one of the questions I always ask when they first come in, first session, second session, is, what would you like to do in therapy? What's your goal in therapy? Oh, I want to live better. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to get along with my siblings. I want to get along with my parents. I want to stop fighting. I want clarity about whether or not I want a divorce. All these are fair questions that I get when people come in. Now, to get to those answers, um, it really doesn't matter if you are an introvert or an extrovert, if you are a sensitive or a judging or a perception. What really matters is if you have a thought flexibility, if you can be flexible with your thought. Because what I find, the number one thing that gets in the way of our relationships, of our success, and of our thriving is this inflexibility of things are this way, things should be this way. And instead of, this is how I've been doing things, is there a different way or a better way or a different way? I don't even know if it needs to be better. But what other ways do people do the same thing? How do you solve the same problem in your house? And then if people become open to that, then I find that they thrive because they're able to see what the other one is going through, what the other one is doing. Because a lot of times, like, well, why would they do that?
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, take a minute. Let's unpack that. Because once you unpack, and then all of a sudden, oh, I get it. And in the minute you get it, you can have empathy. And when you have empathy, you have understanding, and then people can get along.
Wow. What well said. We're both international people and I love traveling. And I've lived in a few different places. How does this translate? Uh, does all of this translate well into, like, say, Portuguese and into Brazilian culture as it does into English and Canadian culture? How do you see this as a global perspective now as well?
I think this is a human perspective, right? We
Perfect.
are we are I have this artist that I absolutely love. It's Ai Weiwei. He's a Chinese dissident, and he made this huge series of projects about the refugees. And the
Okay.
big statement he made this huge black boat, um, real size, with these parents and these children in the middle, all made like all black. You couldn't see any definitions, just the figures. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm telling you about this art piece. It's beautiful. And then right on top, he puts the refugee. It's not a refugee problem. It's a
Right.
human problem.
It is.
So when you ask me, does this translate? Is it a Canadian thing? Is it a US thing? Is it, we have a Brazilian thing. We have different cultures. I'll give you that. We have different cultures, the way Brazilians do things, the way Canadians do things, the way we relate, the way we party, the way, and it's the same thing as introverts and extroverts. And again, people are very different. No matter where we go, we are going to find differences. I mean, in a household, I have two kids, and those two could not be more
Oh, yeah.
different, right? Like in a household.
Right.
So let alone a city, a country, a continent. So we're all very different, established. Now, the one thing again that we need is this mental flexibility, is understanding somebody else's point of view. So this is good for a Brazilian as well as for a Canadian, as well as for a American or European. This is helpful for everyone. I find that people who have lived abroad and traveled tons, like you've lived in different continents, you've had experiences with different cultures. People who have been exposed, or if you're the son or daughter of immigrants, or if you have different nationality parents and you have these families are distinct, then that just kind of comes with your DNA, because then you have to navigate dad's family that is, let's say from Europe, and mom's family that is from, I don't know, Jamaica. All of a sudden, it's like those are very two different cultures. And hey, you start being flexible and navigating from the get go, from little. Whereas if you have a more homogeneous family culturally, then you might not realize that not everybody is the way your family is. So you need that little push as you grow up and as you evolve as a human.
Right. Now, the way you put it just does bring people together here. And what are, like, you've got an amazing book out. If you haven't guessed the title, everyone, it's Connected.
That's like the third word I say.
But what are some of the themes in the book that people need to go out get so that they've got more information on what you've been speaking about today, and really wrap their minds around your message?
So the big message, I think our talk has been more about the big message, as in, why do we need connection? So
Yes.
we need connection because in order to succeed, in order to thrive, your relationships need to be going well. The quality of our relationships determine the quality of our lives.
Yes.
This is not my quote. This is Esther Perel, but she is spot on. The quality of our
Absolutely.
relationships. If you're doing well with your parents, with your kids, with your partner, with your friends, then you have all this energy to invest in your business, to invest in your professional life, to invest in things that you do for yourself. So things are going well, then you're naturally propelling forward. Try to perform well when your spouse offers you divorce papers. Try to perform well when you find some drugs in your kid's backpack. Try to perform well when your parent gets a very difficult diagnosis. So it just shows you how big a proportion, relationships take on our lives. So that's my big umbrella, which is we need to have good relationships in order to allow ourselves all this energy to thrive everywhere else in life. Now, the book is more tactful. The book talks about, well, great, you sold me on the, yes, I have to have better relationships and invest in them and, be so wildly
Right.
intentional
Yeah.
about them. Great, Patricia. What's like, how do I
But
do
how?
that? That's the $1,000,000 question. And that's the book question, because it actually does go through step by steps, like things that make you a good, somebody makes you, sorry, what actions can you take that will make people want you near them or part of their team? Because I use the analogy of a team. What makes you a good team player? Why would people pick you to be on their teams, to be part of their village? So it's a little, the book goes on to behavior shifts, like small behavior shifts that we can do in order to be more likable, be more understanding, be less judgmental. So it's a little bit of research. It's a little bit of storytelling. People that I know and respect a lot. Also, some client stories are in there, and also some research things that I find from clinical experience. So it's a little of everything, but that's
Is,
what it is. It's a
yeah.
tactful. It's a roadmap to improve your most important relationships.
Now, I think I heard someone also say something like that. Mel Robbins, was it?
Mel Robbins might have said exactly that. She was actually very kind to give me a little blurb on my book, and she called the book a roadmap to improve your most important relationships. And ultimately, that's what it is. The last chapter of the book, there's an action guide. So how to improve specific relationship. I'm having issue with my boss. Go to the action guide. It tells you how do you improve a relationship with your boss? How do you improve the relationship with your parents? So it's very specific.
I love it. Now, how
Mm-hmm.
do they find out more information about yourself? Obviously, yeah, go to the regular places to get the book. But
Yes, regular places to get the book.
how do they find out more about yourself there?
So my website is www.patriciabathory.com. So go there. I have a profile on LinkedIn as well, on Instagram. So drop me a note, have a question. You can book an online session if you want. Let me know what it is and give me a chat about what you thought about my thoughts. If you disagree, I'd be very interested and this is what it is, that the curiosity, the intellectual curiosity is, I'd be interested to hear
Yes.
why people
Yeah.
disagree with the stuff that I say. Cause I'm like, okay, it's just going to make my thinking better. It's going to make, okay, you're right. That didn't make sense. You're right. That is actually not true. So then it allows then my theories and my thoughts to evolve. That's why I love it so much. So yes, drop me a line, drop me a note.
And
I'm
that's
always interested.
and once again, that's patriciabathory.com, correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right. Definitely check out Patricia and order the book.
Art of the book. Your
Order the
relationships
book.
are going to improve. Mel Robbins says so. So just go get
Go do it.
it.
And of course, stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.